Organizations are raising the alarm over the increasingly acute hunger crisis in the Gaza Strip. We do want to warn our viewers that these images in this segment are disturbing. They're difficult to watch, but they also show the reality of what is a really horrific situation. The UN's World Food Program said this week the food crisis in Gaza has reached astonishing levels of desperation, with a third of the population not eating for multiple days in a row. The Hamas-run Palestinian Ministry of Health said it recorded 2 more deaths due to famine and malnutrition over the past 24 hours, raising the number of deaths due to food shortages to 113. NBC News has not been able to independently confirm those numbers. Aid into Gaza has largely been through the United Nations or the U.S. and Israeli-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. But those distribution efforts have been plagued by violence, with multiple incidents of Israeli forces opening fire on crowds seeking aid. Now, this afternoon, the State Department deputy spokesperson was pressed on the administration's position on the situation in Gaza. Look.
This humanitarian catastrophe lies at the feet of Hamas, who could end this conflict today by releasing the hostages and laying down their arms. Hamas.
That suggests that short of Hamas doing that.
These kids are dying. Doctors don't have medicine. They don't have fuel.
This is something that we have dedicated. The president and the secretary have been dedicated to getting as much aid as we can into Gaza in a way where it's not being looted by Hamas.
That was our Andrea Mitchell there asking that last question. Joining me now is the spokesperson for the International Committee of the Red Cross, Steve Dorsey. Steve, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. This is just a devastating situation, as Andrea, the other reporters were pointing out. What are you hearing from your teams on the ground? I understand you had contact just this morning.
It's heart-wrenching, Kristen. We've been seeing the same images the world have been seeing. We've been experiencing it ourselves on the ground in Gaza, seeing these malnourished bodies of little children wasting away. In some cases, they are too weak to even cry. Imagine being a parent unable to feed yourself, let alone your own children. We've been experiencing at our healthcare facility at a Rafa Field Hospital an increasing escalation in emergency nutrition needs. We've been seeing patients with signs of malnutrition in areas where disease has complicated and exacerbated conditions, including diarrhea, which can be life-threatening and deadly. And not only that, but our staff, too. We've been hearing reports of journalists being unable to access food. Our staff are humanitarian workers on the ground. We've had to restrict our own meals for our own staff. They're waiting in the same lines to access food. These are not robust meals. These are not nutritionally diverse meals. We're feeding them. We can no longer feed their families. This is how dire it's become.
It is almost unbearable to look at the pictures and to hear your descriptions. Is this technically a famine yet? What does that characterization mean, and what could it bring to the situation, if anything? How would you describe what we're witnessing?
Yeah, the Red Cross doesn't assess famine, but we can report what we've been seeing, which is, of course, those signs of malnutrition, the access to food and how it's limited throughout Gaza. There's 3 main problems with the food situation. The first is there's simply just not enough food getting into Gaza. Even if there is food, how do you cook it with no fuel? Secondly, Gaza has become one of the world's most expensive places to buy food, the food that's left. And third, there's no more local capacity for food production. The farms, the agriculture systems, the water infrastructure, it's all collapsed. And this is all converging for a really dangerous situation now.
How, given the fact that you're having to restrict food and resources to your teams on the ground, does it threaten their ability to be able to help?
Absolutely. It limits our capacity for sure. We're not able to fully address all the needs of all the people that need us. The existing healthcare and nutritional infrastructure inside Gaza is unable to do that right now. In our hospital, we are having to manage food just like we're having to manage medicine, which is use it responsibly. And we've already been overwhelmed by people with injuries from weapons in this war. And if you're not concerned about surviving every day from war, you're concerned about disease and hunger, too.
I want to play you what an Israeli spokesperson had to say when pressed about this horrific situation in Gaza and get your reaction on the other side. Take a look.
In Gaza today, there is no famine caused by Israel. There is, however, a man-made shortage engineered by Hamas. This idea of famine and starvation has been thrown at us consistently on a weekly basis for the last 2 years now. It has never come to pass. So these are false warnings which come from these aid organizations. And I also would say that where there is hunger in Gaza, it is hunger orchestrated by Hamas.
What do you make of that argument and, of course, the idea that Hamas actually intercepts and steals some of these food shipments?
Well, first of all, in any armed conflict, it's the responsibility of all those participating in the fighting to ensure that civilians have access to food, that it's protected, and that they can meet their basic needs, which is not just food, it's also water, healthcare, even communication systems. But when we're talking about these aid trucks that we've been seeing lined up on the border, it's not just about counting trucks, Kristen. It's about making sure that the food and the aid on those trucks get to where they need to go, to the people that need them. And that's virtually impossible. Most of these areas are under evacuation orders. There are unexploded ordinances. Drivers can't be found. They're worried about their safety. So the logistics just of that alone continue to be a challenge.
Well, we appreciate the work that you and your teams are doing. Thank you so much for being here to help us understand this situation.
Thank
we
you.
really appreciate it.